Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you exactly how I plant my dahlia tubers for a very special summer display. And dahlias are very rewarding to grow because they continue flowering right up until the first frost. And they are what you call a cut and come again flower. So the more you cut them, the more they will bloom. So yeah, that's why probably they are one of my favorite flowers to grow. So I'm going to show you now exactly some little tips and some tricks that I've learnt along the way working as a horticulturalist in various gardens. I've picked up a few little tips and I'm going to share them with you today. There are many types of dahlias. There are decorative ones, there are pom-poms, water lilies, cactus, and it's really important to choose the right type of dahlia for your garden. So if you're looking for cut flowers, then you want to be looking for something that will provide you with nice long stems. So like labyrinth and Jerry Hoke. Sometimes a cafe au lait is quite good, although sometimes their heads grow quite big and heavy and can fall over when they're in a vase. But you want to be looking for those types of varieties. However, if you're looking for a dahlia that is a bit more compact for your borders, you can get something like the Bishop series or Bishop's Children. And they are a lot shorter and bushier. They're going to provide you with exactly the same amount of flowers, lots of flowers, but they're just not so good for cutting. So shorter flowers, bushy, healthy plants, but mostly for the front and middle of borders. Now is the perfect time to be planting your dahlias. You might actually find some really good deals now in the garden centre. And if you haven't bought any of your dahlias yet and you are planning just to nip out and see if there are any deals, see if there are any dahlia tubers left over, then just make sure you check the tubers. They should be, let me show you, they should be very firm to touch. And I always write the name of the dahlia on the tubers so I know exactly what it is. You can use plant tags, but to save on plastic, I just write with a Sharpie on the tubers so I know exactly what I'm planting at the time. But yes, check, make sure the tubers are really firm. So any squashy ones, you want to discard those or don't buy them. So when to plant dahlias is the question. So here in the UK, dahlias are classed as tender perennials. So that means that they don't tolerate frost. So tubers can be started indoors, in pots like this, or in trays like this. It's just like a form of chitting, and you literally just pop the tubers in and just cover them with a little bit of peat-free compost. And then I will plant these out. Well, they're ready to be planted out now. So any time after the frost has passed, so normally from mid to late May. So these are ready in the queue, ready to be planted out now. So dahlias are very hungry plants and they need very well-drained, fertile soil in full sun. So before planting out, you might want to enrich the soil with plenty of well-rotted organic matter, maybe some garden compost or well-rotted manure is ideal. And if your soil is quite a heavy clay, you could plant them on a slight mound or a ridge to avoid rot. And also you might want to think about adding some horticultural grits to improve some drainage. So to get a head start, I pot my tubers up indoors in March or April. And as you can see, I pot them up actually in my greenhouse. When I say indoors, I mean in my greenhouse, but you can pot them up indoors. Put them on a windowsill or a cold frame, just somewhere that is frost free and slightly warm. The more warm they are, the quickly they will sprout. But as you can see, mine are all sprouting quite nicely in there. So I started them off in the greenhouse, and then when it got a little bit warmer outside, I then have moved them out to the cold frame. And I have got about 50 or so in here. I have planted the ones that you just seen already in the raised beds. And now I've got a few of these to plant up I've got some to be going in the polytunnel to add to my collection in there, and I have got some that I'm going to be planting out in the garden now. I'm going to show you how I do that. So by late May, you will be able to plant your dahlias directly in the ground, whether it be in your borders or your cutting garden. You just need to dig a hole large enough to accommodate the tubers or the root ball. You need to space your plants out between, I would say, 40 and 60 centimetres apart. It will depend on your variety that you choose. And then for tall varieties, you need to try and stake them if you can. I know stakes can look a little bit ugly sometimes, but you may want to have a look at some options, because you'll find that when we get some strong winds or some strong summer rain, that the dahlias will, if they get quite tall, they will snap, they will fall over. So you could look at using some netting if you are growing quite a few in a big patch, or you could just use some odd bamboo stakes. And now's quite a good time to stake them as you're planting them, and I can show you how I do that. A little bit of weeding, and this is the tuber that I'm going to be planting. So this is called Bristol Stripe, and it's a lovely pinky purple and white stripe. And as you can see, this has already started to sprout in the greenhouse. You see there's a little bit of greenery coming through. And what I need to do is, when I plant this in the ground, is make sure that this is visible, if possible, above the ground. Maybe not these ones so much, because they have been shooting off in the wrong direction there. This is the old stem from last year, and that's really important that that stays above the ground, so you know exactly which way round to plant it. You'll always be able to find the old thick woody stem. So it needs to go in like this, and because the stem needs to be above the ground, you don't want the hole too deep. Now, as you're planting, you don't want to just cover it with earth, because it's going to create some gaps, some air pockets in there. In fact, that's a little bit too deep even. I'm just going to make it a little shallower. Let's try that. So I'm just going to let it rest in like that. And it's really important, see there's lots of gaps underneath here. So as I cover the soil, I want to be able to make sure that I'm doing it nice and slowly, and that I'm tucking the soil underneath through the tubers. Because if you don't do this, then the plant itself will become unstable as it grows taller. You want to have as much stability as possible. So I'm just tucking it in as I go, just nice and slowly. Using my fingers to get right in and underneath. And still be quite careful. You can see I've still got the shoots here that are visible. And then when you feel like you've planted it, a good little thing to do is just lift and just give a little shake like this. And then press down again one more time, because that just releases and it just moves the soil. And then you can just add a little bit more. And try one more time, and you'll find that so much sturdier now. And so that is your test to whether you have planted your dahlia correctly or not, is just to give it a little wiggle, a little lift up and down, and if that feels secure, then you've planted it perfectly. Now, the ones that have been potted or chitted already are a lot easier to plant. As you can see, the tubers are all covered in compost already. So it's just a case of making the right sized hole to make sure that the green stays above ground. And again, that's too deep. I'm just going to backfill that in a little bit more, and then sit that in the hole. Make sure it's far away from the other one. Okay, that should be about right. And then very, very easy to plant that. And then again, just make sure that there are no air pockets around the edge. So just using your fingers quite firmly around. It's a really good idea to stake your tubers even when they're at this stage. So I'm just going to quickly show you. You've made your hole, for example, and you pop your tubers in. And then instead of staking them later on and they're all covered up and you don't know where the tubers are, and you might accidentally stab through a tuber, which is a little bit of a disaster. Now is a good time to do it because you know exactly where the tubers are. So you can just stake. If you can see the new shoots coming up already, you can try and place the stake as close to that shoot as possible. So your stake goes in, and then you just backfill and plant it as usual. And then that is job done. So it's a good, quick, easy method to do, and it will avoid any disasters when the plant is in full growth. So all I need to do now is water my dahlias in very well, and then every couple of weeks, once the dahlias are quite established, I will feed them with a liquid fertiliser. That just works well for me. So I use normally a seaweed fertiliser. So every other week I'll do that. And then the same with the watering as well. I don't want to water little and often. So better off, especially in dry spells, better off watering maybe once a week, maybe even once every other week, and that will encourage the roots to go deeper into the ground. So it's much better to do that rather than water little and often. So the only other thing that you need to watch out for, and that is slugs and snails. Luckily I've got chickens, so I let the chickens out, and slugs and snails absolutely love the fresh shoots of new dahlias. So just be very careful to watch out for those. So I just do a little patrol in the evenings, just as it's getting dark, especially if it rained as well, and you just go out and just check dahlias and then just scoop your slugs up and then just toss them somewhere that you don't want them. And that's my method that I use, and that works quite well for me. So that's everything you need to know about planting dahlias. Well, that's how I plant dahlias. And if you haven't got any, nip to the garden centre now and see if you can find some really good deals and just get them in the ground. You won't be disappointed. And then they'll come back next year as well. And I'll show you how to do that at the end of the year if you are digging them up. But let me know in the comments if you're planting particular varieties. I'd love to know what you're growing, especially if you're growing cut flowers like myself. And don't forget to subscribe, and it'll keep you up to date with everything that I'm doing here in my garden.